Last year, the Reserve Bank of India's balance sheet grew by a massive 20%.
Right, which is just huge.
Yeah, I mean, it's swelled by trillions of rupees. They're managing these unprecedented transaction volumes, navigating crazy volatile global markets, and basically overseeing a digital payments infrastructure that is, practically eating the world.
Totally eating the world.
But at the exact same time, their actual human workforce shrank by 2.2%.
I know. It's honestly the single most counterintuitive statistic in the entire annual report.
Exactly. You would think a central bank managing a rapidly expanding 21st century economy would be on this massive hiring spree, right? Like building an army of bureaucrats.
So you'd expect floor after floor of new analysts.
Right. But instead, they are quietly, methodically transforming into this lean, highly automated, AI-driven tech company.
A tech company that just happens to hold a central banking license.
Yes, and understanding how they are pulling off that magic trick, doing vastly more with less, is exactly why we are sitting down today.
Because look, if you don't grasp that underlying technological pivot, the rest of the data we're about to cover is just going to look like a random list of, disconnected administrative updates.
So, welcome to this deep dive. For this session, we are stepping into a very specific reality. Think of us as your two senior analysts.
We've been through the grinder.
We absolutely have. We know the institutional architecture, and we are sitting down with you, our peer, to help you prep for your high-stakes promotion and prelims exam. Our mission today is to exhaustively unpack Chapter 11 of the Annual Report 2025 to 26.
Right, which is the chapter covering governance, human resources, and organizational management.
And we're not just going to read the report at you.
No, definitely not. As senior analysts, we know the examiners are looking for conceptual clarity. So we will be constantly cross-referencing this latest annual report data with the foundational 00.RBI F&W document.
We really need to look at how the legacy framework of the past is clashing with and adapting to the digital realities of 2026.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you want to understand how a massive legacy institution manages to grow its balance sheet by 20% while shrinking its headcount, you have to start at the very top.
You have to look at the boardroom.
Right. So let's get into Section 1, the governance architecture and the apex shift. Now, we both know the RBI was born out of the Reserve Bank of India Act of 1934.
Yeah.
But we aren't going to patronize you with a history lesson about the Hilton-Young Commission. What we need to talk about here is friction.
Precisely. Because the 1934 Act wasn't designed for an era of algorithmic trading, or instantaneous cross-border digital settlement.
No, it was designed for paper ledgers and telegrams.
Right. Yet the legal power to govern the modern banks still derives entirely from that nearly century-old text.
Right. And the two most critical pieces of that text for your exam are Section 7 and Section 8 of the RBI Act.
Section 7 is really where the actual power lives.
It is. It explicitly entrusts the general superintendence and direction of the affairs and business of the RBI to the Central Board of Directors.
The board is the absolute apex.
Headed by the governor, currently Sanjay Malhotra, and he is assisted by up to 4 deputy governors.
And then Section 8 dictates the personnel makeup, covering the appointment of those directors, including the ones nominated by the central government.
But here is the friction we mentioned. A central board, no matter how brilliant, cannot effectively micromanage the daily operations of a 21st century monetary system.
No, the sheer volume of data would completely paralyze them.
They'd be spending 24 hours a day just approving localized expenditure reports.
Exactly. So to alleviate that friction, the board delegates. It's assisted by 2 primary committees, and both of those are headed by the governor.
Let's break those down.
The first is the Committee of the Central Board, or the CCB. This is basically the operational workhorse. They handle the current business.
And in the 2025 to 26 period, they held 46 meetings. Right.
Yeah, heavily relying on e-meetings to maintain velocity. They are the ones actually looking at the dashboard and approving the weekly statement of affairs.
The weekly statement being that vital snapshot of the bank's health. And what about the second primary committee?
That is the Board for Financial Supervision, or BFS. They handle the overarching regulatory and supervisory mandate over commercial banks and non-banking financial companies.
Okay, but beneath those 2 primary committees, the architecture gets really interesting and highly testable.
Oh, very testable.
The governance structure drills down into 5 specific subcommittees of the central board. Let's list them out because the acronyms are Prime exam fodder.
Let's do it.
We have the Audit and Risk Management Subcommittee, so ARMS. We have the Human Resource Management Subcommittee, HRMSC.
Right.
The Building Subcommittee, BSEC. The Information Technology Subcommittee, ITSE. And the Strategy Subcommittee, SSC.
But here's where it gets genuinely fascinating. Unlike the CCB and the BFS, which are headed by the governor, these 5 subcommittees are each headed by a non-official director.
Wait, why? What is the mechanical advantage of putting an outsider at the head of your internal tech or strategy committee?
It is entirely about preventing institutional groupthink. Think about the IT subcommittee. If you have an internal central banker heading that committee, their instinct might be to stick with legacy vendors they've used for 3 decades because it just feels safe.
It's that classic nobody ever got fired for buying IBM mentality.
Exactly. But if you put an external, non-official director at the head, say, someone who has run a massive private sector tech conglomerate, they bring external friction.
They can push back against the governor.
Yes. They can say, no, your legacy core banking software is obsolete, and we need to pivot to a cloud-native architecture.
So they act as an immune system against complacency.
Exactly. It injects private sector agility into public sector governance.
Okay, so that explains the apex structure in Mumbai. But the RBI isn't just sitting in a tower, right? It has localized branches all across the Indian subcontinent.
Right.
Now, historically, the legal framework mandated specific area, local boards, northern, western, eastern, southern, to keep a pulse on regional economies.
But the 2025-26 annual report highlights a massive shift here.
Right. This is a vital update for the exam.
Yeah, because the concept of geographical boundaries in finances, well, it's largely dead.
A digital rupee doesn't care if it's being spent in Chennai or New Delhi.
Exactly. Consequently, the localized oversight has been consolidated. Currently, a standing committee of the Central Board is functioning in lieu of those area local boards.
So if a multiple-choice question asks you who is currently fulfilling the duties of the Eastern Area Local Board, the answer isn't a localized branch director.
No.
The answer is this centralized standing committee, which consists of 3 non-official directors. They're effectively stepping in to run the governance for all 4 geographic zones.
It's a massive streamlining of the bureaucracy. I mean, they're stripping out regional redundancies to move faster. But while that is a significant administrative consolidation, it really pales in comparison to the most profound structural overhaul in this reporting period.
Oh, the big one.
Yeah.
The one that completely redefines how money moves in the country.
Yes.
We are talking about the pivot in payment system oversight. And I want you to really listen to this, because if you are sitting in the exam room and you write down BPSS as the apex authority for payments, you have fundamentally failed to understand the modern RBI.
Yeah, you will fail that section.
For years, the Board for Regulation and Supervision of Payment and Settlement Systems, the BPSS, was the absolute authority. It was a staple of RBI governance. But as of May 2025, the BPSS is entirely defunct.
And you really have to understand why it had to die.
Why did it?
Well, the BPSS was architected for a world where payment supervision meant, making sure fiscal checks cleared between bank branches in 3 business days.
Right.
It was designed for batch processing and early RTGS transfers. Now, contrast that with the reality of 2026.
It's night and day.
Completely. We're looking at UPI scaling globally. We are looking at billions of microtransactions happening via tokenized credentials on smartphones every single month.
We are actively deploying central bank digital currencies.
Exactly. The sheer velocity, the cryptographic complexity, and the systemic risk of the payment network have mutated beyond recognition.
Right. Imagine a Tuesday morning where a new third-party payment app glitch accidentally double processes 2 million UPI transactions in 30 seconds.
The legacy BPSS, with its traditional review cycles, would be completely paralyzed.
Completely.
Exactly. The governance structure literally had to be amputated and replaced via legislation because the 1934 Act couldn't handle the physics of modern digital money.
So the BPSS was officially replaced by the Payments Regulatory Board, or PRB.
And this wasn't just an internal HR reshuffle. This required a formal Gazette notification by the Department of Financial Services, Government of India.
Let's lock down the critical sequence of events here, because these are the concrete data points examiners use to separate the top tier of candidates from the rest.
Yep.
The PRB officially replaced the BPSS on May 9th, 2025. You have to know that date.
May 9th.
And the reconstituted PRB built specifically to regulate this high-velocity digital landscape, held its very first meeting on January 5th, 2026, chaired by Governor Sanjay Malhotra.
The transition from BPSS to PRB is really the textbook example of how the RBI is shedding its legacy skin. It is the most vital statutory update in the chapter.
So we have an agile central board, we have external directors fighting groupthink on the subcommittees, and we have a brand new payments regulatory board built for the digital age.
Right.
But a flexible high-speed board is completely useless if they don't have a map. You can be driving a Ferrari, but if you don't know where the destination is, you're just going to crash faster.
The very fast crash, yeah.
Which brings us to Section 2, Corporate Strategy and the Utkarsh Evolution. How exactly does a central bank chart a course for the next 3 years?
They rely on their central nervous system for long-term planning, which is the Corporate Strategy and Budget Department, or the CSBD. Now, a lot of people think the Budget Department just, counts the pennies and approves travel expenses. But the CSBD's mandate is vastly more powerful. They are the architects of the Reserve Bank's medium-term strategy framework.
Now, I have to push back here.
Okay.
Look, we've both sat in our fair share of excruciating corporate strategy meetings.
Oh, absolutely.
We've seen the glossy PDFs filled with buzzwords like synergy, paradigm shift, and agile optimization. Every massive conglomerate rolls out a 3-year vision document that usually just ends up collecting digital dust on an internet server.
True.
The RBI's framework is called Utkarsh. Why should we, or the examiners, believe that Utkarsh is anything more than corporate buzzword bingo? What actually changes on the floor of the bank because of this document?
That is a very justified skepticism, especially coming from the private sector where strategy documents are often just, marketing tools for shareholders.
Exactly.
But you have to remember the fundamental difference of a central bank. The RBI does not have a profit motive to organically drive its efficiency.
Right. A private bank innovates, because if it doesn't, it goes bankrupt.
But the RBI cannot go bankrupt. Therefore, it relies entirely on frameworks like Utkarsh to mandate institutional progress. Utkarsh isn't a suggestion. It is a rigid architectural blueprint that ties direct accountability to specific departments.
Okay, give me the mechanics of it. The previous iteration, Utkarsh 2.0, covered January 2023 to December 2025. That is now concluded, and the CSBD has rolled out Utkarsh 2029.
Right.
How does this new blueprint actually function?
So Utkarsh 2029 covers a specific 3-year time horizon, April 2026 to March 2029.
And listener, do not let an examiner trick you with a calendar year option.
Yeah.
It aligns with the financial year cycle, April to March.
Right. The framework operates on a highly structured 3-layered architecture supported by 6 core strategy pillars.
And these pillars aren't just vague aspirations. Let's look at how they translate to reality.
Mm-hmm.
One of the pillars mandates adapting to new technologies with agility.
Yep.
Another focuses on enhancing the competitiveness and depth of financial markets. Another explicitly targets expanding internationalization initiatives.
So when Utkarsh 2029 sets a pillar for internationalization, the Foreign Exchange Department can't just nod and agree.
No.
They are legally mandated to execute cross-border memorandums of understanding, like, getting UPI infrastructure integrated with payment rails in the UAE or Singapore.
Right.
And when a pillar demands adapting to new tech, the IT department is forced to deprecate legacy servers and implement cloud-native core banking solutions within a rigid 36-month window. It forces momentum into a bureaucracy that would otherwise naturally trend towards stasis.
It's the engine of that 2.2% headcount reduction we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
Utkarsh mandates the tech upgrades that allow fewer people to manage more complex systems. And beyond this massive 3-year blueprint, the CSBD has a few other targeted deliverables for 2025 to 26 that show up on exams because they represent quantifiable, testable changes.
One of the most fascinating ones is the Citizens Charter.
Oh, yes.
The Citizens Charter is fundamentally the RBI's public contract regarding accessibility and responsiveness. It tells the public exactly what services they can expect and within what time frame.
And the CSBD undertook a massive review of this document.
Right. And the result was that the Citizens Charter was rationalized to exactly 200 services effective July 1st, 2025.
Now, 200 is a very specific, very clean number.
It really is.
It implies a brutal pruning process. You don't just naturally arrive at exactly 200 services without actively cutting the fat.
No, you don't.
They looked at service 201, 202, and 203 and decided they were either redundant, obsolete, or could be fully automated, so they no longer required a public service level agreement.
Exactly. Rationalization is just a polite bureaucratic term for elimination and consolidation. It's making the interface between the public and the central bank leaner and faster.
Now, the CSBD isn't just looking inward at the bank's own departments. They also manage the RBI's relationship with external intellectual capital.
Right.
The RBI funds several massive academic and research bodies, and the CSBD acts as the nodal department for 4 specific institutes.
You will definitely need to recognize these 4 for the exam.
Let's list them.
There's KEFRAL, which is the Center for Advanced Financial Research and Learning, IGIDR, the Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research, NABM, the National Institute of Bank Management, and IIBM, the Indian Institute of Bank Management.
But why do we care? I mean, why does a central bank need to fund academic think tanks?
Because monetary policy cannot be formulated in an echo chamber.
Right.
However, historically, there has been a massive disconnect. You would have brilliant economists at IGIDR publishing groundbreaking papers on rural credit velocity, and those papers would just sit in an academic journal.
While the RBI's Rural Credit Department formulated policy based on 5-year-old internal data?
Exactly. The classic ivory tower problem.
Precisely. So the major update for 2025 to 26 is that the CSBD finally implemented a formal mechanism to shatter that wall.
Oh, really? How?
They created a structured pipeline to actively leverage the research capabilities of these 4 institutes directly for various RBI departments.
So if the PRB is dealing with a novel cryptographic risk in a digital currency, they can now formally task COFRAL with researching the vulnerability.
Yes, and integrate that academic analysis directly into the regulatory policy draft. It bridges the gap between theoretical economic research and real-world, high-stakes central bank policy formulation.
So synthesizing this section for the exam, the CSBD is your central nervous system.
Right.
They launched Utkarsh 2029, which runs from April 2026 to March 2029, utilizing a 3-layered structure with 6 pillars.
They aggressively rationalized the Citizens Charter down to exactly 200 services.
And they built a formal bridge to extract actionable policy data from their 4 funded academic institutes.
That is the strategic roadmap. But as we all know, no plan survives first contact with the enemy.
Very true.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, fortifying the Fortress Enterprise-Wide Risk Management, or ERM 2.0.
Because here's the brutal reality of central banking. A brilliant, agile board and a visionary Utkarsh master plan are completely, utterly useless if a sudden sovereign debt crisis, a localized natural disaster, or a state-sponsored cyber attack wipes out your core operational systems.
Strategy means nothing without survival.
Exactly. That leads us directly to the Risk Monitoring Department, the RMD.
The RBI is the ultimate backstop of the Indian economy. If a commercial bank fails, the RBI steps in.
Right.
If the RBI fails, the entire national economy grinds to a halt. Their risk management cannot just be adequate, it must be impregnable.
And they structure this defense using a globally recognized framework known as the 3 lines of defense model.
Now, people often use the analogy of a fortress to explain this, with guards at the gate and security cameras in the center. But honestly, for a modern financial institution dealing with digital risks, a fortress is a terrible metaphor.
It really is.
A fortress is static. A fortress just sits there and waits to be attacked by a known enemy with a battering ram.
Right, but the risks the RBI faces in 2026 polymorphic cyber malware, sudden climate-induced supply chain shocks, algorithmic flash crashes, they don't look like battering rams.
No, a fortress doesn't adapt until a wall is already broken.
Exactly. So instead of a fortress, I want you to think of the RBI's 3 lines of defense as a highly advanced biological immune system.
It's dynamic.
It is dynamic, it learns, and it adapts.
That is a far more accurate conceptual model for the exam. Let's map it out.
Okay, so the first line of defense represents your localized white blood cells. These are the individual business areas and departments themselves.
So the foreign exchange department, the IT department, the payments department.
Exactly. They are out in the bloodstream every single day, and they are primarily responsible for identifying, assessing, and managing the daily operational risks that pop up in their specific environments.
They are the first to encounter the pathogen.
Correct. But individual white blood cells don't have a view of the entire body. If the IT department is fighting a localized server outage, they might not realize that the foreign exchange department is simultaneously experiencing an abnormal spike in cross-border transaction latency.
Right. They can't see the systemic infection taking hold.
That is where the second line of defense comes in.
The second line is your central lymphatic system. This is the risk monitoring department, the RMD.
Right.
They perform the centralized, enterprise-wide risk monitoring function. They sit above the individual departments, aggregate the data from all those localized white blood cells, and look for systemic patterns.
They ensure everyone is adhering to the overarching enterprise-wide risk management framework.
And finally, you have the third line of defense. If the first line is the white blood cells, and the second line is the central nervous and lymphatic system, the third line is the external medical examiner conducting a comprehensive diagnostic test.
This is the inspection department.
Right. Their job is to test the first two lines, find the vulnerabilities, and report directly to the top management.
So, first line, business areas. Second line, RMD. Third line, inspection. You absolutely must know this architecture.
But the massive paradigm shift in the 2025 to 26 annual report and a guaranteed exam topic is the evolution of how that second line, the RMD, actually functions.
We're seeing the death of ERM 1.0 and the birth of ERM 2.0.
And this shift embodies the exact transformation we discussed at the start of this deep dive.
Yes. ERM 1.0 was fundamentally an autopsy approach. It was compliance-driven.
Something would break, the RMD would investigate, check the compliance boxes, and write a report to ensure the same mistake wasn't repeated.
It was entirely reactive.
It's looking in the rearview mirror.
Exactly. But ERM 2.0 is preventative medicine. It is described in the report as a value-creating and anticipatory approach.
Anticipatory, that's the key word.
It acts as a roadmap for the next decade. The framework emphasizes the heavy use of advanced data analytics to actually foresee systemic risks before they materialize into a crisis.
It shifts the entire departmental philosophy from asking what went wrong yesterday to what subtle anomalies in today's data indicate a massive failure 3 months from now.
It's the difference between a forensic accountant and a predictive algorithm. But here is the catch. You cannot execute ERM 2.0 with Excel spreadsheets and manual reporting.
No way.
You cannot be anticipatory if your data is siloed and delayed. To predict the future, you need a massive technological upgrade.
Which is exactly what the RMD rolled out. They launched a major enterprise-wide technological platform called NextGen-IRIS.
IRIS stands for Integrated Risk Monitoring and Incident Reporting System.
Now, the original IRIS application was launched back in 2020, but this next-gen version is a completely revamped, deeply analytical architecture.
It functions as a comprehensive risk repository equipped with advanced risk management tools. It is the engine that actually powers the ERM 2.0 philosophy.
And the go-live date for NextGen-IRIS is a hard data point you must memorize. It's April 1st, 2026.
April 1st, got it. And you can't have an advanced digital risk system without advanced digital security.
Right.
Alongside the rollout of NextGen-IRIS, the information security policy, the ISA's policy, was completely revised in 2024 to counter emerging, highly sophisticated cyber threats.
The operating procedures for this massively revised policy were finalized and completed by the end of December 2025.
Now, there is one more critical tool in this risk ecosystem, and it actually loops back to the CSBD, our strategy guys from Section 2.
Oh yeah. The CSBD developed a brand new dashboard specifically for business continuity management, or BCM.
This is a brilliant evolution. Historically, business continuity plans were essentially massive PDF documents detailing what to do if a building caught fire or a server crashed.
Yeah, people read them once during onboarding and then completely forgot about them.
Right, and when a crisis actually hits, nobody has time to search through a 400-page PDF to find the emergency contact for the backup data center in Hyderabad.
Exactly. So the CSBD replaced that static document with an interactive BCM dashboard.
It acts as a real-time, dynamic crisis response tool during times of disruption.
If a localized natural disaster takes out the power grid for the entire eastern region, this dashboard provides the immediate, interactive data required to route critical operations to other centers without dropping a single transaction.
So connecting the dots for the exam, the Risk Monitoring Department, RMD, is your second line of defense.
Right.
They drove the shift from the reactive ERM 1.0 to the anticipatory data-driven ERM 2.0.
To execute this, they launched the NextGen-IRIS platform on April 1st, 2026. This is how the immune system adapts to the modern threat landscape.
Okay, let's move deeper into the diagnostic side of things. Let's look at Section 4, the third line internal audit and inspection.
We just established that the inspection department is the independent medical examiner, the third line of defense that tests the integrity of the entire bank. Let's look at how they actually execute that mandate.
Their primary function is evaluating the internal control and governance systems and, crucially, providing independent risk assurance.
They do not report to the individual departments they are auditing.
No, they report directly to the top. Specifically, they report to the RMS, the Audit and Risk Management Subcommittee, which, as we discussed in Section 1, is headed by an independent, non-official director to prevent conflicts of interest.
The overarching methodology the inspection department utilizes is called the Risk-Based Internal Audit Framework, or RBIA.
And this is an efficiency mechanism. Under RBIA, the department doesn't waste time auditing a low-risk administrative desk with the same intensity as the high-frequency trading desk.
That makes sense.
They dynamically allocate their audit resources based on the specific real-time risk profile of the auditee.
Now, within this department, they administer two very specific types of audits. And listener, you need to pay close attention here because the acronym CA and CSAA look similar, but the actual human behavior they describe is entirely different.
Oh, yeah. Examiners will absolutely try to mix these up in a multiple-choice scenario.
So let's ground this in reality. Imagine I run the foreign exchange trading desk. How does a concurrent audit, a CA, actually work on my floor?
Well, a concurrent audit is a real-time parallel examination. In practical terms, it means the auditor is metaphorically and sometimes literally looking over your shoulder.
So as my desk executes a massive dollar-rupee swap, the concurrent audit process is examining that transaction almost simultaneously or within hours.
Yes. It is continuous, ongoing, and designed to catch a fat finger error or a compliance breach the moment it happens, before the money leaves the ecosystem.
Okay, so concurrent means real-time parallel checking. Now, what about control self-assessment audits, or CSAA?
Ah, CSAA.
Because frankly, the idea of self-assessment in an audit context sounds a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me the departments audit themselves before the actual auditors show up. Isn't that just marking your own homework?
I get why you'd say that.
What's to stop a department head from just checking all the boxes and saying everything is fine to avoid scrutiny?
It is a very common objection, but CSAA isn't about marking your own homework for a final grade. It's about psychological ownership of risk.
Okay.
The inspection department provides a rigorous, centralized framework. The business unit, your foreign exchange desk, has to go through that framework and critically evaluate its own adherence to procedures. You have to formally identify your own control weaknesses.
I see. So if I, as the desk head, say everything is perfect in my CSAA, and then the independent instructors arrive a week later and find a massive glaring hole in my compliance.
Then you aren't just guilty of a compliance breach. You are guilty of failing to understand your own operational environment, or worse, actively concealing it. It builds a culture of extreme accountability at the first line of defense.
Got it. Concurrent is real-time oversight. CSAA is forced accountability and self-evaluation.
Right.
Now, just like the RMD got their next-gen Iris upgrade, the inspection department isn't running these complex RBIA audits with clipboards and red pens. They've undergone their own massive technological transformation.
The annual report states unequivocally that the complete automation of the inspection department's audit processes has been achieved during this reporting year.
Complete automation. That is a definitive phrase.
It is.
And the engine behind that is the Audit Management System, or AMS. The AMS centralizes, digitalizes, and automates the entire life cycle of an audit, from the initial risk assessment to the final reporting to the RMS.
But here's where the RBI proves it is actually acting like a bleeding-edge tech company.
Yeah.
They aren't just satisfied with digitalizing the workflow. They have formally constituted an internal working group to examine the feasibility of adopting artificial intelligence and machine learning directly into the internal audit process itself.
Let's stop and really think about the implications of that. We're talking about an AI algorithm auditing the Central Bank of India.
Yeah.
That is a massive institutional leap. And honestly, it sounds incredibly dangerous.
Why do you say that?
Well, AI hallucinates. We've all seen large language models invent legal cases or confidently output garbage data. What happens if the AI auditor hallucinates a clean bill of health for a department that is actually deeply compromised?
That's a huge concern.
Or what if a bad actor manages to subtly poison the training data so the AI ignores specific types of fraudulent transactions?
Those are the exact existential risks the working group is wrestling with. But you have to look at the upside, which is scale. A human auditor doing a concurrent audit can only sample a fraction of a percent of the millions of transactions flowing through the bank. They look for obvious red flags. An AI doesn't sample. An AI ingests 100% of the transaction data.
Wow, it looks at everything.
Everything. And it doesn't just look for a missing signature, it looks at the IP address of the login, the specific millisecond the transaction was approved, the historical behavior patterns of the employee, and cross-references all of that in real time to flag a subtle, complex anomaly that a human would never, ever see.
So the AI doesn't replace the human auditor. It acts as a hyper-intelligent targeting system.
Exactly, pointing the human auditor to the exact transaction that looks statistically suspicious.
It is the ultimate expression of the anticipatory organization. So synthesize the third line for your exam prep. The inspection department is the third line.
Right.
They use the risk-based internal audit framework, RBIA. They achieve complete automation via the audit management system, AMS. And they are actively exploring AI and ML to analyze 100% of transaction data.
And remember, they report to the ARMS, ensuring that independent line of communication straight to the top.
All right, let's pivot to Section 5. Human capital training, engagement, and representation. Because this is where the rubber meets the road.
Definitely.
You can have the most advanced AI algorithms, the most robust ERM 2.0 frameworks, and the most visionary Utkarsh strategy pillars in the world. But algorithms don't make ethical decisions.
No, they don't.
Software doesn't formulate monetary policy. The RBI is fundamentally an organization of human beings. So how is the Human Resource Management Department, the HRMD, managing the actual people during this aggressive, sometimes brutal technological pivot?
It brings us right back to that incredible statistic we opened with. You have to understand the scale and the trajectory of the workforce.
Give us the numbers.
As of December 31st, 2025, the total staff strength of the Reserve Bank stood at 13,220 employees.
13,220. And that represents a 2.2% decrease from the previous year, which was 13,520.
Right.
Well, the bank's balance sheet expands by 20%, while the complexity of global digital finance explodes, the human headcount is actively shrinking.
And this isn't accidental attrition. It is the direct intended outcome of everything we've discussed so far.
How so?
When you rationalize the Citizens Charter to 200 services, you need fewer public interface officers. When you deploy the audit management system for complete automation, you need fewer junior clerks reconciling paper ledgers. The RBI is systematically replacing rote, manual labor with advanced technology.
They're doing drastically more with vastly less. Now, looking at the composition of those 13,220 employees, the RBI maintains very specific representation metrics.
Yes, they do.
As of the end of 2025, the bank employed 1,073 ex-servicemen and 324 persons with benchmark disabilities, or PWBD.
These figures are critical because they demonstrate the bank's strict adherence to government reservation policies and inclusive hiring practices.
It's not just a compliance exercise either.
No, the HRMD holds regular, structured meetings with representatives from various recognized employee welfare associations to ensure these policies are translating into actual workplace equity.
Now, managing a workforce of 13,000 people is hard enough.
Yeah.
But managing them while the entire culture of the institution is shifting from a slow bureaucracy to a hyper-fast tech organization requires masterful communication.
Oh, absolutely. People get scared when they hear automation and AI.
The HRMD has two major communication initiatives to manage this cultural shift. They sound somewhat similar, but they serve entirely different behavioral functions. Listener, you must be able to distinguish between Vartalap and voice for the exam.
Let's ground this in a real-world scenario.
Okay.
Imagine you are a mid-level analyst, and you have a radical, highly technical idea for using machine learning to predict bond yield fluctuations. You wouldn't stand up and pitch that idea in a massive auditorium with 11,000 people. You need a small, intimate room where you can actually argue with senior HR officials and tech leaders. That is voice.
Oh, voice stands for voicing opinion to inspire, contribute, and excel.
Exactly. It is a targeted platform for free-flowing interaction. It is designed to harness specific, innovative ideas from the ground up.
And during 2025 to 26, they held exactly 9 voice sessions covering just 181 participants.
It is an exclusive, highly focused feedback loop.
Small group, high-impact innovation. Now, contrast that with VardaLab. VardaLab translates roughly to conversation or dialogue.
Right.
This is not about pitching a niche tech idea. This is the massive town hall initiative. Its goal is sustained employee engagement, broad cultural alignment, and reinforcing core organizational values across every single department.
The scale is entirely different. In 2025 to 26, they conducted 217 VardaLab town hall meetings, engaging over 11,000 employees.
Practically the entire workforce participated in a VardaLab town hall.
Yeah.
So that is your key exam distinction. Voice is the small room of 181 people innovating. VardaLab is the massive auditorium of 11,000 people aligning on culture.
And beyond just talking to employees, there is the monumental task of upskilling them.
Right. If the RBI is pivoting to ERM 2.0 and AI-driven audits, the baseline technical competency required just to survive in the organization is rising exponentially.
A junior analyst hired 5 years ago now needs to understand data analytics.
To manage this, the RBI utilizes several dedicated physical training centers. Knowing which college handles what is a classic matching question on these exams. Let's run through the map.
All right. Down in Chennai, you have the Reserve Bank Staff College, or RBSC, which handles broad executive training.
Okay.
In Pune, you have the College of Agricultural Banking, the CAB, which focuses on rural and cooperative banking structures.
Right.
In Mumbai, there is the College of Supervisors, the COS, which trains the people who regulate the commercial banks.
But the most critical one for this tech-centric evolution is located in Bhubaneswar. That is the Enterprise Computing and Cybersecurity Training Institute, or ECCTI.
Right. This is where they send staff to learn how to actually operate systems like Next-Gen Iris and defend against cyber threats.
And they also maintain 4 zonal training centers. But here's the logistical bottleneck. Physical colleges can only train a few hundred people at a time.
Yeah, you can't put 13,000 employees through Bhubaneswar fast enough to keep up with the pace of technological change.
You need to scale the learning. And that is why the HRMB's agenda for 2026 to 27 includes a massive digital shift, the full-scale implementation of massive open online courses, or MOCs.
MOOCs fundamentally democratize access to advanced training within the institution. It means an employee sitting in a regional office in Guwahati can be upskilling on basic Python programming or blockchain fundamentals over their lunch break.
Without needing to be flown across the country to a physical classroom.
Exactly. It allows for continuous, asynchronous, flexible learning across the entire shrinking workforce.
So connect the concepts for the exam. The workforce shrank to 13,220. To ensure those remaining employees can handle the automated high-tech workload, they rely on small-scale voice sessions for innovation, massive VardaLab town halls for cultural alignment, and digital MOOCs to scale upskilling alongside specialized institutes like the ECCTI in Bhubaneswar.
It is a comprehensive human capital strategy designed entirely to support the technological pivot.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, Institutional Infrastructure, Rajpasha, and Premises.
We've talked about agile governance, digital strategies, AI audits, and upskilling human capital. But at the end of the day, a central bank exists in the physical world.
It occupies millions of square feet of real estate across the Indian subcontinent. This physical and cultural environment is managed primarily by the Rajpasha and Premises departments.
The Rajpasha department focuses on the cultural and linguistic infrastructure. Specifically, their mandate is to implement the official language policy of the Government of India.
It ensures bilingual capacity, promoting the rigorous use of Hindi in the bank's internal workflows, legal publications, and public-facing documents.
And for exam purposes, there is one highly specific, easily testable data point you must capture from this department.
What's that?
During the 2025 to 26 period, they launched a brand new consolidated Hindi magazine.
The magazine is named Sanchayika, and the specific launch date to remember is August 14th, 2025.
Sanchayika, mid-August 2025. Lock it in.
Now, moving from the linguistic infrastructure to the literal concrete and steel, we have the Premises department. Their mandate is to provide best-in-class and environment-friendly physical infrastructure.
And this presents a fascinating engineering and logistical challenge. The RBI is not a disruptive startup operating out of a leased co-working space. They own dozens of massive, highly secure legacy buildings constructed decades ago. It is exponentially harder to retrofit a massive 40-year-old concrete fortress with modern HVAC systems and solar microgrids than it is to just build a new green building from scratch.
And yet they are doing it, and they are executing it aggressively. This ties perfectly back to our discussion on strategy. Remember how we said the CSBD's Utkarsh framework sets rigid, unavoidable targets?
Right.
The premises department was given strict green targets under Utkarsh 2.0 for the deadline of December 2025, and they absolutely smashed them.
The measurable outcomes are deeply impressive. Their Utkarsh target was to achieve formal green ratings for 9 office buildings and 16 residential buildings.
Through aggressive retrofitting and sustainability initiatives, they exceeded both metrics, achieving green ratings for 11 office buildings and 19 residential buildings.
They didn't just stop at green ratings, they beat their targets on actual energy consumption.
The strategic goal was to hit 7.5% renewable energy usage across their massive power footprint. They overshot it, hitting 9.1%.
And for overall energy savings, actually reducing the total amount of power drawn from the grid, the target was again 7.5%. They nearly doubled that target, achieving total energy savings of 14.5%.
It is the perfect concluding proof point. It proves that the strategic pillars set by the CSBD in the boardroom are actually translating into concrete, measurable, real-world outcomes, literally changing the energy physics of the buildings the employees work in.
Let's pull all of this together. We've taken you through the entire landscape of Chapter 11. You understand the friction that forced the creation of the PRB in May 2025 to handle the explosion of digital payments.
You understand how Utkarsh 2029 forces a rigid 3-year technological evolution.
You know that the RMD shifted from a reactive autopsy model to an anticipatory immune system with ERM 2.0, powered by the NextGen Iris platform launched in April 2026.
You know, the inspection department achieved complete automation via the AMS and is actively exploring the existential risks and massive scale of AI auditing.
You know, the HR department is using Voices, Vartalap, and MOOCs to upskill a workforce that has strategically shrunk by 2.2% down to 13,220 people.
And you know, the premises department smashed their Utkarsh green targets while Raj Pasha launched Sanchayika.
If you internalize the why and the how behind those data points, the what becomes impossible to forget. You aren't just memorizing facts, you are understanding the mechanics of a revolution.
And that leaves us with one final provocative thought for you to carry into your exam prep. We started by pointing out the ultimate paradox. A 20% explosion in the balance sheet paired with a 2.2% reduction in human staff.
Right.
We have just spent the last hour detailing exactly how technology, from the AI-curious audit management system to the anticipatory NextGen Iris, is driving that divergence. The RBI is doing vastly more with vastly less.
But look at the trajectory. Utkarsh 2029 pushes for even deeper tech integration over the next 3 years.
If an AI can eventually audit 100% of transactions in real time, if localized boards are replaced by centralized e-committees, if MOOCs replace physical classrooms, where does the human headcount stop shrinking?
Is the central bank of 2035 going to be run by 5,000 highly specialized data scientists managing an autonomous algorithmic core?
And more importantly for you right now, sitting at your desk, how does that fundamental unstoppable shift alter the very nature of the promotion you are currently studying so hard to achieve? Are you studying to be a part of the legacy bureaucracy, or are you adapting to manage the algorithms of the future?
Something to think about as you hit the books tonight.
Good luck on the exam.